Thanks for the coffee.
Dude, thanks for everything, and thanks for being in my life.
I wanted to ask you simple stuff, real simple about just wave energy. I know we've been talking about a lot about surfing and waves, but now how do we translate that to energy? You can feel it when you're out there, right? You can feel the power.
You can feel it when you're out there. I mean, I lived on the North Shore for 7 years, and you can feel it at 2 a.m. at night, 5 houses back from, where the sand touches the road. It's rocking dishes. It's waking people up.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
North Shore?
Yeah. So there's an immense amount of power. Now, this is one of the most powerful places in the world. So, that's not a solid description of, wave power the world over.
But all right, well, let me ask you that then. What makes the North Shore so powerful? Because are there trenches or canyons?
Yeah, great question, right? There is nothing in between the North Shore of Oahu and the source of the storms. And the distance, great, comparative to other distances you might travel per day, is actually not that far, a couple thousand miles, as opposed to, 4,000 or 5,000 miles that you would have from, the southern hemisphere, right? And there's nothing. That swell, that power just comes in unadulterated, right? It's not slowed down by the continental shelf. It's not slowed by offshore reefs. It comes in and just hits right there. And that's why, I think 70% of all, surfing photography that's, hits the magazines and publication, back in the day and even now on social media and what have you, is from pipeline. And if it's not from pipeline, it's within the beaches that you can actually see pipeline from. A lot of that has to do with the lighting, but, lighting, good or bad, you still have to have the waves present. And those waves are intense.
So the North Shore at its peak, we're still trying to work on the actual numbers, how that translates to kilowatt hours. But what do you think that could power with a breakwave system?
That's a fantastic question. I think that the North Shore, if we were able to, let's say you just put a breakwave power generator system right there on the North Shore, in between, right where backdoor is, right? Backdoor pipeline right there. And, you ran it for 6 months, 8 months out of the year when the North Shore has waves. I think you'd be able to power that entire area from just one system. If you're able to blanket the beach, I think you could most likely power the entire northern end of Oahu, right? So Wailua, Haleiwa, you could get all the power you need. And that would include, generating enough power to, be able to conserve it during the summer months. And so you could power continually through the entire year. But one Waimea Bay wave, I mean, that's enough power there. If you just took that wave and just plopped it down into your average neighborhood, it would wipe out, 2 or 3 city blocks before it lost steam.
Yeah.
And so there's 2 powers at play. One, there's an intense amount of power, right? Just, the density of water, 800 times more dense than air, moving at speed, right? And then the other portion is that if you just magically snapped your fingers and was able to stop that freshly broken wave and go out and collect that water, that's an enormous amount of water. That's an enormous amount of volume there.
All right, so you mentioned the wind density versus the water density. Wave energy compared to solar, compared to wind. But let's not forget oil as well, because we're competing against oil. What's the differences?
Well, that's a great question, right? So here's the deal, right? There's a couple things at play. And one is like humans, ever since the beginning of time, will always defer to whatever's easiest, right? And the easiest thing to go for is oil. But now that we're seeing that that's got a detrimental effect on the environment as a whole, then we look for alternative, energy sources that are renewable in nature, right? Solar seems like the obvious one, and it is. Because, the sun shines, I just put something out there and it naturally collects. The whole thought of it, the whole system just seems really, easy and simple, right? It just makes sense to everyone, and it has kind of like a nice sound to it. Now, in totality, that's not as easy and simple as we think, right? We got to put out some, items over a vast area. It doesn't produce as much power as we absolutely perfectly like. We've got to store it in battery. It doesn't work at night, right? So it's not exactly perfect.
It's only like 6 to 8 hours a day, depending on where you are.
6 to 8 hours, right? And obviously it doesn't work the world over, north of the 66th parallel, the south the same, right? It's not going to work. You've got, entire periods of darkness, entire periods of light. Not that, those areas of the world are vastly populated, but either way. And so there's some hindrances of solar. Wind, right? It's the same thing, right? Hey, like I just put up a windmill, we've used them for hundreds and hundreds of years. I put up a windmill, it collects energy, I can use it. It's, it's a mechanical transfer, but wind's not as dense as water. So, there's some disadvantages compared to wave energy there, right? And then, also not really talked about, dams produce a lot of energy as well, right? But then there's some environmental concerns as well. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but it is. We didn't think about it hundreds of years ago, but, fish and the life cycle of fish is drastically disturbed when you put up a dam, when you dam a water source, right?
Or you were also telling me about when you cut off water supply from certain areas, water flows naturally through rocks, through minerals.
Well, yeah,
like Malibu.
Yeah, so 100%. Once you dam up a body of water, there's second level effects, along the entire way that water, the system of travel that waterway takes, right? And Malibu is a perfect example, and it's obviously people know about that because it lets out in one of the most populated, high-priced areas in the entire world. Not only that, it sits atop a surf zone, and the way that it used to flow actually increased the distance the waves were able to be ridden and the way that they were ridden. Just a small difference in the way that water flowed changed things dramatically, right? And so that's a little bit of damming and a little bit of how the water naturally exits into the ocean, right? So it's outlet. There's wind has its hindrances, solar has its hindrances, even, dams have their problems as well, right? And wave energy is not without, complications as well, obviously. But the thing that you get with wave energy is you get an intense amount of density, right? And so that allows you to use substantially less infrastructure. Now, the problem is where the complication of wave energy comes in is that the ocean destroys everything it touches all the time, right? It's always working to either drown you, destroy something, rust it, right? The ocean in and itself is just a naturally destructive force. And so the thing is like you need to kind of sneak out there and grab that energy and get back before the maintenance just kills you, right? Because I feel that every wave energy converter catches, more energy and works more efficiently than solar, wind, and dams right up until you have to repair it and maintain it, right? And that's where you lose it, right?
Yeah.
That's why I think the unknown is shore-based energy conversion. That's the one where we need to get that right. And once we do, I think we'll have a big solve with wave energy. And so, then that begs the question, well, why haven't we done shore-based energy conversion before? And the reason we haven't done shore-based energy conversion before is the exact thing that we're looking at right now, right here in Ocean Beach, California.
January 7th, 2023. We forgot the surfboard.
The general public would lose their minds if we put a massive infrastructure piece out here on the beach where people are having their picnics, people are walking out to go surf, people are, they watch the sunset every night, people take their daily walks and jogs and workouts. There's, I'm looking at 11 different volleyball fields right now. There would be massive revolt to putting infrastructure out here right now. But 30 miles to our south and 20 miles to our north is massively unpopulated areas where you could lay down the infrastructure, gather shore-based energy conversion in perpetuity, and no one would be bothered. No one would be hassled. Furthermore, you could make slight adjustments to the wave energy conversion device that Andres and I have been working on and designed, and you could put it even here and gather wave energy and you wouldn't disturb anything.
So what about the environmental factors? The whole industry in general, is wave energy messing with animals, ecosystem in the water?
Well, that's the thing, right? That's why. So shore-based energy conversion, right? That's one of the reasons it hasn't been done. Is like, okay, well, if we shore-based energy conversion, it's going to disrupt the fish. Yes, if you use a rotator that spins fast by the power of the waves and fish get caught in it, yeah, in essence, lack of a better term, that's a fish blunder. If you put a battery system, something that generates electricity offshore and it generates, electricity, then we have to get that electricity back to shore. So then we've got to use subsea cables. So we're going to disrupt, the natural cycle, miles of energy that way, right? And so that's why I designed the system the way I did. It's just the same as a motorless boat traveling in through the water, right? Over and over again. And that's the only thing that's in the water is that
Like a surfer.
pretty much, like a surfer, like a small boat traversing the surf zone, right? There's no disruption of fish. There's no disruption of cycles of life. There's no disruption of the intermixing of the shore against the surf zone, against the shoreline, because I knew these would be questions, right? And so our design is the most efficient one as well. Now, you could put in different designs in different areas where the waves break closer to shore and are more powerful. But once you did that, those areas don't have, fish, riding in the whitewash of waves. So you could, seek out different designs and they would be efficient and they would work and they would also not destroy life. So there is modifications you can make. But yeah, way better than tidal machines, way better than damming up a water source, 100 miles from shore.
Yeah.
As far as environmentally, this is also a very secure system as well.